She came to rest on a snowbank at the side of a highway. A teenage girl who could have been anyone's daughter. Her journey had taken her places no young girl should ever know. But finally, it had brought her home to a small Pennsylvania town she'd never seen before. If only she'd survived, she would finally have known there were people who cared.
She appeared on the highway in the spring, a young woman, her life cut short, her past and her identity a mystery. Only by finding out who she was could we ever hope to find her killer. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The highway gave the killer a quick and easy escape route, but the trail the FBI used to pursue him was twisted and long. We hoped it wouldn't be a dead end.
March 24th, 1993, Bellefonte, Pennsylvania. A late snowstorm had held spring at arm's length. On his way to work, a motorist drove down a quiet, snow-lined roadway. But something on the roadside caught his attention. What he saw was unthinkable in this peaceful valley. Pennsylvania State Police were immediately called in. A young woman lay dead on a snowbank near the junction of two major interstates.
What do we got here?
The county coroner determined the girl had died before she was dumped there. She was wearing only socks, panties, and a sweater. And she was young, high school or college age. But perhaps most disturbing, there was a rope knotted around her neck. And her hands were also bound. District Attorney Ray Griecar was at the scene, appalled by what he saw.
What struck me is that someone had not only murdered this young woman, but treated her with such disrespect. The way her body was found haphazardly askew on this pile of snow suggested that she had been just thrown out as if she were nothing more than a piece of refuse along the side of the road. And it's something that makes you angry when you see it.
Her body was taken away for an autopsy. Soon word of the crime began to spread in this close-knit town of 7,000. It was the first homicide in Bellefonte in 13 years. Like District Attorney Griecar, the townspeople were shocked and outraged. FBI Special Agent Randy Kohik was among them. He was drawn to the case well before the FBI was officially involved.
That whole area up there is known as Happy Valley. It's a nice place to raise your kids. I lived there for 12 years. Crimes like this just don't happen there. And needless to say, to have a young girl's body dumped in your community is a heinous thing. They were extremely upset, and even more so, they wondered whether or not perhaps the murderer might live in the community.
Detectives searched for anything that might help identify the girl. They found no purse or wallet, and little else.
And I remember commenting to Trooper Madden that morning that he would be very, very fortunate indeed if he was ever able to even identify this young woman, let alone figure out who murdered her.
Trooper Madden of the Pennsylvania State Police would be lead investigator.
There was a slight indentation into the snow, about 6 inches, where the body itself looked like it had been dumped off of some type of object, be it a truck or vehicle, into the berm of the snow.
Madden surmised the vehicle had been a truck with a cab fairly high off the ground. Tire tracks nearby would prove him right. They were made by dual wheels, probably the rear wheels of a tractor-trailer cab. An evidence technician made plaster casts of the tracks to be sent to the Pennsylvania State Police lab. Examiners there would attempt to identify the brand and check for anything unusual about them. Then, if a suspect were found and his tires matched the tracks, the casts could help link him to the scene of the crime. Troopers fanned out to find clues. They searched both nearby fields and local Penn State University, but found nothing useful. The body was taken to Lehigh Hospital in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. There, coroner Dr. Mahalakis would perform the autopsy, as Trooper Madden observed. The doctor determined the cause of death to be strangulation. There were no gunshot or stab wounds. The body's core temperature revealed the young woman had been dead less than 12 hours when her body was discovered. It seemed she had died some time before she was dumped on the roadside, as the coroner at the scene had guessed. Other tests indicated she had had sex before she died.
Whether she was raped or had consensual sex at the time was not known. However, based on the circumstances, we believed at the time that a rape may have occurred.
Dr. Mahalakis carefully removed the rope from around the girl's neck.
Wait a minute, right here, Doc. There's a piece of hair, this black hair.
Under the knot was a single dark hair. It didn't belong to this blonde girl. But was it the killer's? The hair would be sent to the FBI forensics lab in Washington, D.C., along with the knots for analysis. The type of knots could be important. They might help the FBI develop a profile of the killer. But the best clue came from the girl's left hand. There appeared to be something written on the palm.
She had some faint numbers written on the palm of her left hand. They had been written on possibly in ink, and they'd been on there for some time as they had faded, and they were barely legible. It was thought by both Bill and myself that possibly this could be the lead we were looking for that could possibly lead us to her identity.
Numbers,
The writing was
letters.
indecipherable, though it looked like it might be numbers.
That's pretty faint. Can you get that?
Agent Kohig suggested experts at the FBI lab could make them clear enough to read.
It was thought that perhaps we could have these enhanced by the FBI lab in Washington, D.C., so the skin was removed from her left hand and it was forwarded to the FBI lab.
The girl's fingerprints would be run through a national database of missing persons. But the results would prove disheartening.
Checks were made with her fingerprints through the APHIS system, which is a national system of checking fingerprints. They came back negative. Checks were also made using descriptors of the body and characteristics of the body, and that also came back negative. So we had no record of a person missing that matched this person we discovered.
Then, x-rays were taken by a forensic dentist. They could be crucial in identifying the woman. If a tentative ID were made and these x-rays matched those taken when the woman was alive, they'd confirm her identity. But first, she'd need to be visually identified by someone who knew her in life, which would be difficult after a full autopsy. Closing facial incisions made for the dental x-rays and masking contusions would take hours of painstaking work. To restore her to the way she looked in life would require the artistry of a skilled mortician. Stephen Mondock was just the man for the job.
When we received her body, she had been through quite an ordeal. You know, we had to put a little bit of makeup on her. We had to get her hair done. We dressed her. We made her look as lifelike as possible at that point. We then proceeded to take photographs that were eventually placed in the newspaper.
Those photographs depicted her as more lifelike than she had looked when first found. But Mondock gave her more than a face. He gave her a name.
When the coroner brought her in, he said, "We have a Jane Doe for you." And I said, "Carrie," I said, "you know, I don't like calling people Jane Doe." I said, "It seems so impersonal." He says, "Well, what are we going to call her?" And I said, "Well, she was found in Spring Township, right?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Why don't we call her Spring?" And I said, "Well, she was found in the dawn of the morning, so why don't we call her Spring Dawn?"
Mondock's caring work gave investigators exactly what they needed. They showed photos of the girl to dozens of truckers at local truck stops, restaurants, and gas stations. Some offered the names of people the girl resembled. Her young face struck a chord of recognition in many who saw it. Notices in local papers and on flyers also generated leads.
The outpouring of calls to the state police at the time was plentiful, and we had to sift through every lead to try to determine if this person was a local person.
But none of the leads would pan out. Then, in late April, about a month after the body was found, the FBI lab called Trooper Madden. Their analysis showed the writing on the girl's left palm was a phone number with a Florida area code. Madden found the number had been disconnected, and he began to wonder if the area code itself was wrong.
But it didn't seem right. It didn't seem to fit this particular case. In looking at this person, there was no tan. It seemed as if she came from a winterized area, somewhat similar to where we were. However, we did not know where.
Madden's best guess was that she came from west or north of Pennsylvania, probably within a 12-hour drive from where the body was found. Madden also realized that there were 2 phone numbers written on the girl's hand, not just one. So he noted all the cities within the 12-hour radius that had both the exchanges she'd written down. Madden and Cohick would send the numbers along with photos and descriptions of the young woman to sheriffs and state police in those areas. Perhaps the information would trigger some leads. As they worked the case, the people of Bellefonte followed each new development, offering help and support.
There was a genuine showing of affection for this person and concern. I guess you could say she was posthumously adopted by the community of Bellefonte. And even though we were very quickly able to ascertain that she was not a local resident, there was still a very strong sense of she is someone that we cared about.
As spring bloomed for Bellefonte, the girl remained in people's thoughts. Her story touched everyone, especially Madden and Cohick. These colleagues and longtime friends could not stop thinking about her tragic death and trying to solve the case even after hours.
You can't let the town down.
At the time I was assigned to this case, I had a 17-year-old daughter, and Detective Madden had 2 teenage daughters. So I think for the both of us, we took a very strong personal interest in the case. As a matter of fact, it pretty much took up all of our time during our working hours, and we would often find ourselves talking to each other at night on the phone at our residences.
Never was community support so strong is when Stephen Mondock began to prepare the body for burial.
I had florists call donating flowers. I had hairdressers calling to do her hair. I had people donating clothing. I had ministers willing to give their services, the vault company, the casket companies. The cemetery where she was to be buried was actually at the bottom of a beautiful mountain where there's wildflowers growing. We had the monument company had was willing to donate a stone to bury her. It was just amazing how much the town all came together in an effort to bury her.
More than a month after the body was found, it was time for a burial. Not only did the town want to bring closure to the tragedy, the body could not be preserved much longer. Still, Madden needed just a little more time.
The last thing that we wanted to do as a police agency was to lose the body. In other words, we did not want the body buried at that point in time without identification.
Just when the body could be kept no longer, a break in the case finally came. A sheriff's office in Maine received Madden's information packet on the girl.
See what you think.
Though he didn't recognize her face, he called one of the numbers written on the girl's hand. He had no idea who might answer the phone.
Yes, hello, this is Sheriff.
He reached Mark Rosenberg, a guidance counselor at a local school. Promising, given the girl's age.
I'm Detective Staples. Thanks so much for meeting with me tonight.
A detective visited Rosenberg and his wife at their home.
I'd like to see if you can help me identify the woman in this.
When the detective showed the Rosenbergs a photo of the girl, they immediately recognized her.
Can you look at that for me, please?
And when they spoke her name, it was eerily familiar. Dawn Marie Birnbaum. Steve Mondock's choice of the name Spring Dawn had been uncannily accurate.
And I was shocked. I was amazed. It was just a strange coincidence. But it felt right. She was part of our community.
Mark Rosenberg was one of the last people Dawn talked to before she died. Investigators hoped he could lead them closer to her killer. After a search that stretched from Florida to Maine, investigators had learned the identity of a teenage girl found dead near a rural Pennsylvania interstate. As they spoke to Mark Rosenberg, a guidance counselor at the school she had attended, he said she'd called him just days before she died, from a payphone. He'd tried to help her, but it was already too late. The school she attended was mainly for at-risk teens, like Dawn herself. She'd had problems with authority figures ever since her parents' divorce. In Indiana, where her mother lived, she'd been through a dozen foster homes and run away almost as many times. But at this boarding school, she'd finally found someone she could trust, her counselor, Mr. Rosenberg.
As Mr. Rosenberg was talking to Dawn, the operator was interrupting, telling her to put more money in. Time was running out, and Mr. Rosenberg told Dawn to call him again so he would know she was safe. She said she would do that. He gave her his home telephone number, which obviously she then wrote on the palm of her hand. She said she'd call back, but in fact, she never did call again.
The school would send Dawn's dental records to Pennsylvania, where forensic dentists would match them to x-rays taken at the morgue. The result would be a positive ID and a turning point in the case.
The FBI entered the case officially under our kidnapping statute. Obviously, we had a girl who was found in central Pennsylvania laying in a snow pile, tied up, and who had previously been seen just a few days earlier in the state of Maine. So we have the interstate aspect.
Now, we are aware that
The investigation focused in Maine, where Dawn was last seen alive. Maine state police officers interviewed Dawn's friends, including Heidi Hansen. Heidi told them Dawn had been planning to hitch a ride with a truck driver, as she'd done about a year before. On that occasion, Dawn and another friend, Mandy Gray, had run off with a trucker named John Hoffpower. They dropped off Mandy at her home in Georgia, then continued on. What had started as a ride became a relationship. As the weeks passed, they grew closer.
And the woman of my life, Dawn. She's been waiting weeks to see you.
Hoffpower took Don home to meet his grandmother. They continued to travel together, driving his routes. No one knew exactly where they'd gone or what they'd done, but Dawn spoke fondly of her time with Hoffpower. They'd enjoyed each other's company, and he had treated her well. It seemed one of the few happy times in her troubled life. Then, about a month after Dawn was last seen, the truck was pulled over by police in a random traffic stop. An officer demanded Dawn get out. She complied. When she gave him her license, it triggered a missing persons bulletin filed by her school. The officer told Dawn she'd have to come with him. When he tried to take her away from Hoffpower, she pleaded to stay, to no avail. Police would bring her back to school. Since then, her behavior had been good, and she was due to graduate in just a few months. But things were not as they seemed. Apparently, Hoffpower was still in love with her, and maybe she with him. Though she hadn't seen him since their trip, he had tried to visit her at school.
Listen, I'm sorry, you can't get in here.
But security guards had kept him from entering the grounds.
You got no clearance to come in here.
Not having heard from him in a while, Dawn now told friends she was going to look for Hoffpower and run away with him again. On the evening of Sunday, March 21st, 3 days before Dawn was found dead, she had snuck off from a movie theater. She told her friend Heidi she would hitchhike to the Dysart truck stop in Bangor, Maine, hoping to meet Hoffpower.
Get 2 agents down there ASAP and get me all the information.
Hoffpower now became a prime suspect, since Dawn was last seen headed to meet him. Agent Kohick attempted to track him down. Apparently, he lived in Mississippi. But Hoffpower proved elusive. The closest relative agents found was his grandmother, who lived in Emory, Mississippi. She welcomed them inside and told them she'd raised Hoffpower as her own son. He was devoted to her. No matter where he was, he called her almost every day. He had even brought Dawn home to meet her. Now, when agents told the woman of Dawn's violent death, she was devastated. Then, she shared with him her own tragic news. Last September, a half year before Dawn's murder, her grandson had stopped calling her. He'd also stopped working and taking care of his pets. He'd left his wallet in his house and disappeared. His grandmother believed he was dead, though his body was never found.
His car was found riddled with bullets, and there was some reason to think that he had gotten into some trouble with some very unsavory characters and had met a violent end.
Agents learned his car had been found in September 1992, a few miles from his Mississippi home, 7 months prior to Dawn's death. By a strange twist of fate, Hoffpower's disappearance had led to Dawn's death. If Hoffpower had arrived at Dysart's, Dawn would still be alive. Their star-crossed love affair had ended in a double tragedy. Now, with Hoffpower presumed dead, investigators' struggle to find Dawn's killer was almost back to square one. Investigators' most promising lead had gone cold. They again had no suspect in a chilling case: the death of a beautiful 17-year-old girl left dead on a rural Pennsylvania roadside. On a tip from Dawn's friend, Agent Cohick and Trooper Madden went to the Dysart truck stop in Bangor, Maine, where Dawn had said she was headed when she was last seen.
Cohick from the FBI. How are you? I'm Detective Madden. I wonder if we could ask a few questions.
They showed Dawn's photograph to the cashier, who remembered seeing her on the telephone a few weeks earlier.
She was over there.
Surprisingly enough, even though 2 months had elapsed, agents discovered that people recalled seeing the young blonde girl there standing at the doorway asking truckers for rides as they walked through. She was recalled by several people at the truck stop. And I guess when you know, you're a young teenage girl and you're out on the road like that, people take notice.
It seemed obvious this was where Dawn had made her last phone calls.
This cashier's desk, where a trucker would pay for fuel, was only about 15 feet from the bank of pay telephones which Dawn had used to make calls back home and down to the school. So it was easy to visualize how an encounter would have occurred between Dawn and a trucker.
Agent Cohick secured a federal grand jury subpoena for the telephone records.
Got a problem? Yep, we have a lot of problems.
Going through them would be a painstaking task, but it was the most promising option in a case fast running out of leads.
Mandy, her girlfriend, right?
Mandy Gray.
Some of her other girlfriends?
The people Dawn had called might know where she had been going or who she was going with.
You got it. ASAP.
The phone records confirmed Dawn's call to her guidance counselor, Mark Rosenberg, in Maine. They also revealed she'd phoned other friends. It seemed her last call was at 10 a.m. to Mandy Gray, the girl who'd traveled with Dawn and Hoffbauer. A state trooper visited Mandy at her home in Georgia. Mandy confirmed Dawn had called her from the Dysart's truck stop. Dawn said she'd gotten a ride to Dysart's from a friendly trucker who'd given her money for food when he'd dropped her off. Mandy said her friend had been disappointed that she hadn't found Hoffbauer there. She seemed to have no one else to turn to and nowhere to go. If she headed toward Indiana, where her mother lived, she feared authorities would be looking for her.
Based on the conversation she had had with her girlfriend in Georgia, Trooper Madden and I reasoned that she had obtained a ride with a truck driver from Dysart's truck stop. At that point, I decided it would be best if we attempted to identify who may have stopped there for gas over that several-day period. And so I had a federal grand jury subpoena issued for all the receipts from the truck stop for approximately a 4-day period surrounding when Dawn was last seen there.
Meanwhile, Trooper Madden obtained receipts for the 3 truck stops closest to where Dawn's body was found in Pennsylvania. They hoped that whoever had given Dawn a ride had bought gas in both places. It was possible. The distance from Bangor to Bellefonte is just over 650 miles, but not probable. A big rig can easily travel 1,500 miles or more on a single filling. Undoubtedly, it was a long shot, but Cohick and Madden nonetheless began the painstaking task of scanning thousands of gas receipts.
Over approximately the next 4 weeks, I compiled the receipts from Maine and from Pennsylvania and ended up with 2 separate lists. After comparing one list against the other, I noticed there was only one match on the entire list of several thousand names.
The name was James Robert Cruz, Jr. Cruz had bought gas on the morning of March 22nd at Dysart's truck stop, just as Dawn was talking on the telephone 15 feet away. 3 days later, he gassed up again in Milesburg, Pennsylvania, just a few hours before Dawn's body was found nearby.
So this was a big breakthrough for us. We have a guy who's in Bangor, when Dawn is in Bangor, and in central Pennsylvania right about the time her body is found.
The receipt showed James Robert Cruz Jr. worked at an Ohio trucking company. In response to a call from Agent Kohler, his manager verified the credit card purchases.
Okay, I've got the records. And,
Cruz was driving truck 44 on a route consistent with the events of the crime.
got the times, got the dates, got everything here.
Agent Kohik and Trooper Madden now had a suspect in the killing of 17-year-old Dawn Marie Birnbaum.
Okay, that sounds good to me too. Exactly.
Investigators pursued their prime suspect, wanted for the murder of a 17-year-old high school girl
Wednesday morning, then
whose
we'll go.
body was dumped
Sound
near a
good?
Pennsylvania interstate.
Mm-hmm.
The man was a trucker named James Robert Cruz Jr. His manager told the FBI he was a model employee at an
Exactly.
Ohio trucking company.
This is the file that we're
But
looking
investigators found he had a dark
uh,
past.
for. Yeah, it turns
I
out.
had a criminal history check run in the next few minutes and was able to determine that he had a rather lengthy criminal record. Most importantly on that criminal record was the fact that he had been in the U.S. military, and while in the U.S. military, he had been convicted of attempted murder via strangulation and had served time in Fort Leavenworth for that conviction.
His military records gave investigators another key fact.
We found that his blood type was A positive, which fit him into the small portion of the population which would be a possible source of the seminal fluid found in Dawn.
It seemed investigators were closing in on their suspect.
There's only one thing left that we could do to further attempt to identify whether he might have been the individual responsible for this murder, and that was to make a determination as to what type of tires he had on his truck.
At Agent Kohik's request, an Ohio FBI agent inspected the tires on truck 44 while Cruz was on the road in another rig. The tires were XD1, Michelin, low profiles, a fairly unusual brand. At the Pennsylvania State Police Lab, an examiner attempted to match that brand to the tire cast made where Dawn's body was found. He compared the cast to detailed photographs in a tire reference guide. They matched. Another breakthrough in the case.
So we had a match on the tires, we had a match on the blood, we had the fuel slips. This, at this point, according to the United States Attorney's Office, was sufficient to put together a search warrant to search Jim's truck and to also perhaps take blood and hair samples from his body for DNA analysis.
When Cruz was again away in another rig, FBI evidence recovery technicians examined truck 44. But if Dawn had in fact been in this truck, it would have been at least 2 months ago, so investigators didn't expect to find much. The fact that the truck was exceptionally clean didn't make them any more optimistic.
The search took pretty much the entire day, and it was an exhaustive search. We were searching both the tractor and the trailer itself. There were over 300 pictures taken of the tractor trailer.
But nothing turned up. An evidence technician was about to declare the search complete when something caught the investigator's eye.
And I looked at the passenger door and noticed that at the bottom of the door there was a piece of carpeting. And upon closer examination of the carpeting, I noticed one single blonde head hair interwoven in the fibers of the carpet.
You see something?
It seemed amazing, but there
Tom,
it was,
Bill, come here.
as if Dawn had not been quite ready to give up yet.
What is it? It's like a blonde hair.
The hair would be sent to the FBI lab for analysis.
I thought it was a little bit too good to be true that this could be a hair from Dawn.
When do you expect them, Joe?
Now, investigators waited for Cruz to return from his run.
Mr. Cruz, James Cruz?
They told him they were looking for a runaway last seen at a truck stop in Bangor, Maine.
Do you mind if we use your office?
No, right there on it. Thanks, Joe.
They implied they were talking to many drivers.
Take a seat right here in the shed.
Yeah, we know you had a long
They asked to see Cruz's logbook for his record of travels on the days in question.
Sure.
The logs are government mandated to keep truckers from driving too many hours at a
Gives kind of a
time.
history of where you've been.
Cruz admitted he'd falsified his logs.
Is it pretty accurate?
Well, you know, it's
Truckers commonly alter them to stay within legal limits.
pretty accurately where you've been.
But it seemed Cruz's logs had been selectively altered.
But the one thing we noticed was that the misrepresentations in the log seemed to occur just conveniently when the fuel was purchased in Pennsylvania, also when the fuel was purchased in Dysert's.
I'm sorry.
In response to questions, Cruz calmly described his route. But when asked if he fueled up between Bangor and Pennsylvania, he said he didn't have to. The 240 gallons his truck could carry was enough for the trip.
Is this your signature on this credit card statement?
I then suggested to him that I had a fuel slip indicating that he had in fact filled up his truck on Wednesday morning. He paused for a second and then advised that he did in fact recall doing that, and it was due to the fact that they gave free showers away at that particular truck stop in Mossburg. I asked him why he hadn't remembered it, and he said to me, well, I guess I just forgot.
Mr. Cruz, we have a, look at your picture.
Then they showed him a photo of Dawn.
We asked him if he had ever seen this girl before. At that point in time, he very calmly and casually stated no, he had never seen this girl, he didn't know her, nor had he ever met her before in his life.
They told him they had strong evidence linking him to the crime. Dawn's phone calls from Bangor that coincided with his stopover there.
Do you have any problem with that?
The match of his truck tires to the tire tracks at the scene. And the match of his blood type to the type found on the body. He calmly chalked it all up to coincidence.
I don't know how.
At no point during the interview did any of his mannerisms indicate that he was at all nervous with my line of questioning. And as the night slowly went on, I think even Detective Madden agreed that he became less of a suspect for us, even though we had all this circumstantial evidence. He was just too calm and cooperative.
Do you have any problem with that?
Not at all.
Cruz remained friendly, even when investigators produced a warrant for blood and hair samples. They would later learn from FBI profilers that such an excessively calm response can be a sign of guilt. On September 6th, results of the blood and hair analysis proved them right. The samples from Cruz matched the hair and DNA the killer had left behind on Dawn's body. With that evidence in hand, agents obtained a federal arrest warrant for James Robert Cruz, Jr. The FBI and the Pennsylvania State Police had identified the man who had brutally raped and murdered a young woman. On September 8, 1993, with a federal arrest warrant, Agent Kohick and Trooper Madden arrested James Robert Cruz, Jr. when he returned from another trucking run. As they made the arrest, Cruz suddenly dropped his easygoing attitude.
One of the differences between the initial interview of Mr. Cruz and the arrest of Mr. Cruz was his demeanor. No longer was he the cool, calm, and collected person he had been during the initial interview that we had with him. Instead, Mr. Cruz appeared to be very sullen and was angry towards both Agent Kohick and myself.
Cruz's arrest was the reward for determined investigators, committed to catching the killer of a girl who could have been anyone's daughter. Just 6 months earlier, investigators had only a body in the snow near an interstate with no ID. He was charged with first, second, and third-degree murder, rape, kidnapping, and the federal charge of unlawful flight to avoid prosecution.
But I'd like to take a few minutes.
For Dawn, the nightmare started as an adventure. On Sunday, March 21st, she left her friend Heidi at a movie theater near their school in Poland Springs, Maine. Dawn headed for Bangor, where she hoped to meet John Hoffbauer. A friendly trucker gave her a ride. She and John had been separated for months, and she looked forward to seeing him. But he wasn't there. She could not have known he was missing and presumed dead. Instead, her life would intersect with that of a much more sinister man, James Robert Cruz, Jr.
No, I'm okay. I'm fine.
Dawn spent the
I can't
day
tell
of
you where
March
I am.
22nd making calls
No.
at the Dysart truck stop in
But look, I
Bangor.
was just calling to let you know I'm safe.
She telephoned friends, letting them know where she was and that she was safe.
Okay. We'll just tell everybody I'm okay. Oh, I appreciate that.
She also talked to her school counselor, Mark Rosenberg,
okay.
to say she'd run away,
Tell everybody
but was
that I'm
fine and promised to call him that evening.
Okay. Oh, hang on a second. Hang on.
She wrote his numbers on her hand for safekeeping. When James Robert Cruz paid for his gas, he saw Dawn on the phone, just 15 feet from the cash register.
Okay. All right, well, we'll keep in touch, okay? All right. Bye.
Cruz signed the credit card receipt, billing the gas to his employer in Ohio.
Okay.
Cool out there.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Hey, mister. Where you headed? Do you think you might be stopping in Georgia? Can I get a ride?
Absolutely.
Is this it? Thanks.
It didn't take much to convince him to give her a ride. She and Cruz would head south. Prosecutors reconstructed the events that had led to Dawn Birnbaum's death. She had no idea of the danger that lay ahead. The hours she spent with James Robert Cruz would be her last. While Dawn prepared to sleep for the night, Cruz was still awake, falsifying his logbook. Dawn would soon find herself a helpless captive, trapped by a cruel predator, with no escape. Late on March 23rd, Cruz raped and strangled her, probably in the sleeping compartment of his truck.
That's what it was.
That same night, after buying gas in Pennsylvania, he disconnected his cab from his trailer at the travel point. He drove away, looking for a place to leave Dawn's body. Cruz drove through the backwoods of Pennsylvania, anxious to dump the lifeless girl. In the wee hours of March 24th, he pulled over to the side of the road. He pushed Dawn's body out of the truck and onto the side of a highway entrance ramp.
Chose not to.
Cruz almost certainly believed he'd never be caught.
That's what it was.
And if not for dedicated investigators, advanced forensics testing, and plain good luck, he might easily have gotten away with murder. District Attorney Ray Griecar served as prosecutor.
And one point that I wanted to emphasize to the jury was how long it took Dawn to die at the hands of James Cruz. The pathologist testified that from the moment the rope was knotted around her neck, it took 4 minutes for her to die.
Griecar's approach was effective. On June 14th, after 14 hours of deliberation, the jury found James Robert Cruz Jr. guilty of first-degree murder. The judge sentenced Cruz immediately to life in prison without parole. He is serving his time at the Greene County Maximum Security Prison in western Pennsylvania.
The legacy of this investigation, I would say, is the fact that at the beginning of the investigation, all we had was a young girl laying in a snow pile who had died a death no one should have to die. No identification on her for the most part, and a very strong concern among law enforcement agencies that she would not ever be identified, much less have the killer caught and convicted.
We'd have Cruz behind bars. We have to make sure
But it
that
seemed
he's done.
Kohik and Madden may have
We haven't
performed
had
an even
cases
greater
lately.
service
Well,
than they
tell us
first
why.
realized.
Sequenced with what we've got.
At the time of the arrest, there was a lot of media interest in Cruz because in his own home state of Ohio, there had been a number of young women found along the highways and on-ramps over the previous year or two, and who had been tied up as well and left along on-ramps. A review of our VICAP database indicated over the previous 10 years there were approximately 600 young women that were found along the highways and who had died in a suspicious manner.
We were not able to conclusively state that Mr. Cruz was involved in any of these murders. What we do know is that after the arrest of Mr. Cruz, the murders that we were talking about in the state of Ohio ceased.
For Dawn Birnbaum, peace had finally come. The gentle people of Bellefonte will always remember her, and the killer who took her life and changed theirs forever. Two deadly fugitives are on the run from justice. Authorities follow an electronic trail and chase the escaped convict and his partner from state to state. The suspects are moving fast, determined to avoid capture. The police and FBI must track them down. before they take another life.
In Pennsylvania, an inmate escaped with the help of his female accomplice. Following a trail of fraudulent credit card receipts and death, authorities track the pair, but always find themselves one step behind. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. The FBI and police race to capture the deadly couple, who seem to be running with no direction, no sense of fear, and nothing to lose.
10-7 investigation, Eddie and Bo.
September 25th, 1993. Friends of 74-year-old Guy Goodman contact the Palmyra, Pennsylvania police. They're concerned because they have not heard from him in over a week. Goodman's landlord meets an officer at his rented house.
You have a key for the door there?
I do.
Okay, let's go check it out.
Okay.
You just want to step back there?
All right.
The officer observes shards of broken porcelain on the floor and dried blood on the floor and walls. Blood spatter trails down the hall and leads to the basement stairs. In a storage room, he discovers a body. The officer calls for assistance.
Headquarters, code 3, requesting backup.
24, clerical.
Unit 1833, go ahead.
Detective Paul Zeckman of the Lebanon County Detective Bureau takes the lead in the investigation.
Affirm, go ahead.
10-4, I'll be en route to that location.
The countywide bureau helps township police departments with major crime investigations.
It was evident that the house had been ransacked. The kitchen drawers were open, things were strewn around on the floor. Going down into the basement area, you could see drag marks led from the stairway to a small storage room.
The crime scene is gruesome. The victim's hands and feet are tied behind his back. Several layers of plastic bags, sheets, and blankets enshroud his head. Coverings are tightened at his neck with makeshift bindings.
These items were either duct taped or tied with electrical cords. The plastic bag was duct taped over the cloth covering.
Hoping to find a trace of the perpetrator, crime scene investigators carefully process the house. They dust every surface for latent fingerprints and collect a roll of duct tape left on a table. Likely the same tape used in the bindings. With no witnesses, only the careful examination of every item can help the detectives understand this crime.
We were trying to not only obtain the forensic evidence, but we were also trying to determine if any of the property was taken from the residence. We were able to establish that Mr. Goodman's wallet was missing.
They find American Express charge statements, but the card itself is missing.
Statement here. The account numbers get that all figured.
In the bedroom, investigators discover an open box of checks.
A series of checks from the middle of this box had been removed. We also knew that the vehicle of Mr. Goodman was also missing at this point. What do you have to do out here yet?
Guy Goodman seemed like an unlikely target for this type of attack. Like most of the Palmyra, Pennsylvania community, Chief Michael Wayman knew of the victim.
Guy Goodman was a retired florist. He was a lifelong resident of the Palmyra area, well known within the community and liked by everyone in the community. It was apparent that either the motive for this crime was a robbery that had gone bad, or that there was a robbery after the fact, after Mr. Goodman was assaulted and died.
Palmyra, Pennsylvania is located in Lebanon County. This peaceful community sees fewer than 3 murders per year. In most cases, the victim knows the killer. At the autopsy, the victim's face is unrecognizable. The medical examiner uses dental records to confirm it is Guy Goodman. Based on the body's decomposition, he concludes Goodman has been dead for about a week. Although the victim was severely beaten, his wounds were not fatal. An examination of his respiratory tract reveals he died slowly from suffocation. Latent prints recovered from Goodman's house are processed at the lab. Examiners check the prints against local arrest records and find a match. When the forensics report arrives on Zekman's desk, he isn't surprised by the results.
Fingerprints that we had obtained at the crime scene matched Bradley Martin.
Zekman knows the name all too well.
I just entered him as a wanted person, charging him with the escape from the county prison, so I knew he was on the run.
Many of Lebanon County's inmates are part of a work release program. Bradley Martin, a repeat thief and drug user, is one of these work release prisoners. Over a week earlier, Martin used a 2-hour pass, a weekly perk of the work release program, to meet his new girlfriend, Carolyn King. 27-year-old King worked at a factory where she met the 21-year-old work release prisoner. When Martin failed to return, prison officials launched a fugitive investigation. They called the Lebanon County Detective Bureau. After obtaining a fugitive warrant for Martin, the detectives checked Carolyn King's apartment, concerned for her well-being. But King is not there, and they find nothing to indicate where she is gone, or even if she is with Martin. The detectives entered Martin in NCIC, the National Criminal Information Center. Once the murder of Guy Goodman is discovered, there is a greater urgency to find Martin and to determine if Carolyn King is unharmed. The detectives interview Martin's friends and co-workers. What they learn surprises them.
Through interviews, we were able to establish that Bradley Martin and Carolyn King were together several days after Guy Goodman was murdered. We were able to establish that they were together in the Palmyra area, and then it was just blank.
Detectives face the possibility that Carolyn King may be Martin's accomplice. Earlier, when Detective Zekman ran a statewide background check on King, she came up clean. He tries again, this time using a national database. He learns she has a long criminal history, including theft and check forgery. She has outstanding warrants for her arrest and is also a suspect in 2 murders in Virginia. The detectives have no idea where the 2 suspects are. If they left town right after the Goodman murder, they have more than a week's head start. Detectives hope to track the suspects using the American Express charge card and the checks stolen from the victim's home.
Okay, let me call the guy at the American Express Security Department.
That's great.
Detective Wayman asks American Express Global Security in New York to help. Joe Gannon, the chief investigator in Amex Security, works to assist the police.
And I'll be back to you as soon as I can. Got it. Thanks. We flagged Mr. Goodman's account because he was the victim of a homicide, and the chances were that the perpetrators of that homicide were in possession of that card.
A review of Goodman's account shows purchases made after Goodman's death. The transactions leave a trail that may lead to Goodman's killer.
We discovered that the charges began in western Pennsylvania and continued out through the Ohio Valley, down into Iowa and Kansas, and then they turned north. And the last transaction we had on record was in Rapid City, South Dakota.
Armed with a solid lead, the Pennsylvania detectives waste no time. They catch the next available flight to Rapid City, South Dakota. The killers had disappeared. But the victim's charge card had become the investigators' best informant. Police hope the trail of surfacing transactions will lead them to the murderers. Within hours, the Pennsylvania detectives arrive in Rapid City. Accompanied by local police, they visit the last stores where the charge card was used. Interviews with clerks verify their suspicions.
Up until this point, we were speculating that Bradley Martin and Carolyn King were the two people that were using Goodman's American Express card.
Then, investigators catch their first real break.
Some of the individuals were able to identify Bradley Martin as the user of the card. Some were able to identify Carolyn King as the user of the card.
The revelation confirms their theory.
It was no longer a whodunit. We knew for certain who had done it. Now it was a matter of changing the focus of the investigations to apprehending them.
The Pennsylvania detectives circulate photos and detailed information about the suspects to all South Dakota law enforcement agencies. The Rapid City Police Fraud Unit, or Bunko Squad, tells them of an interracial couple who've been passing bad checks at local stores.
Rapid City Police Department had a black and white bunco team who were trying to do a con game within the area. It was a black female and a white male driving a vehicle with Virginia plates. We knew that this fit the description of Carolyn King and Bradley Martin. We knew that Carolyn King had a vehicle with Virginia plates. We felt that they were there working in the Rapid City area.
Driver's license registration, please.
The Pennsylvania detectives assist as Rapid City police pull over the couple in the car with Virginia plates. They confirm the couple is the team Rapid City detectives have been hunting, but not the suspected killers.
The black female and the white male were in fact not Martin and King. They were just simply another couple that matched the description and who were doing their own criminal activities.
American Express informs the detectives there have been no new charges in over a week. The investigation appears to be back at the beginning with no leads.
Okay, what I can do for you is give you...
But King and Martin are having trouble using their murder victims' out-of-state checks.
Let me get my manager for you, ma'am.
They need another source of cash. Their next victim, a 59-year-old woman traveling alone. Donna Martz.
What are you doing?
The terrified woman complies when they force her to take them to her car. The next day, the Pennsylvania detectives learn that someone passed several of Guy Goodman's checks in North Dakota.
The bank had cleared checks written in a number of locations in the Bismarck, North Dakota area.
This supports the detectives' theory.
They had used the credit card. Now they were utilizing the checks stolen from Guy Goodman at the time of his homicide that further validated that they had to have been the persons who committed the homicide.
Detective Allender, please.
Zeckman phones authorities in Bismarck from the road.
I'm Sergeant Zeckman from Lebanon County, Pennsylvania. I made contact with a detective within the Bismarck Police Department. I told him of locations that I had had checks passed, and I gave him a rundown of the Guy Goodman homicide and who was involved and what evidence we had discovered up to this point. And there was a long pause from the detective. And I asked him what was wrong, and he said, well, we're investigating a missing persons from that same hotel where one of these Goodman checks were passed.
Donna Martz's family called police when she did not return home from Bismarck. They described Martz and her Chrysler New Yorker. Police comb Bismarck for any sign of Martz or her car, but find nothing. The detectives fear Martin and King have grabbed Donna Martz. The case has a new urgency. A woman's life is at stake. Police investigate the death of 74-year-old retired florist Guy Goodman, who was severely beaten, then murdered in his rural Pennsylvania home. Investigators determined that the victim's charge card and a book of checks were stolen. Fingerprints at the scene identify two likely perpetrators: 21-year-old Bradley Martin and his 27-year-old girlfriend, Carolyn King. Pennsylvania detectives Paul Zeckman and Michael Wayman follow the pair of fugitives to Bismarck, North Dakota, and learn authorities there are investigating the disappearance of a woman from the same hotel where one of Goodman's checks was passed. Donna Martz, a traveling tour guide for an interstate bus line, was last seen at the hotel where the suspects were staying. When Martz didn't arrive home as scheduled, her family reported her missing. Local authorities issue an APB on Martz's Chrysler New Yorker. The Bismarck FBI joins the case, led by Special Agent Craig Welkin.
The FBI and the North Dakota Bureau of Criminal Investigation set up a task force which was joined by other agencies, including the Bismarck Police Department and the local Sheriff's Department.
When the Pennsylvania detectives arrive in Bismarck, they share the information on the fugitives that they gathered over the past week.
They became an integral part of the task force on this case. The linking of King and Martin was very critical in the investigation.
With potential suspects identified in the abduction of Donna Martz, the task force still struggles for viable leads. They continue to search the hotel.
We spoke with the clerks at the hotel in Bismarck where Donna Martz was last seen. And they were able to tell us that Bradley Martin and Carolyn King had stayed at the same hotel.
Hotel personnel also recall that around 9 a.m. on September 26th, King and Donna Martz were only a few feet apart.
They were able to confirm that Carolyn King had been in the lobby at the same time that Donna Martz was in the small dining area, having her continental breakfast.
No one noticed Martz leaving the hotel with anyone, but investigators fear she's been kidnapped. Now they need to find out where the fugitives went next. Then, police discover Guy Goodman's car, abandoned, outside Bismarck. There is no sign of Donna Martz. And the search reveals only receipts from stores along the suspect's route and several unused checks bearing Goodman's name. Once again, the suspects have left authorities with no leads. FBI Special Agent Craig Welkin knows they must find Martz before her kidnappers decide to kill her.
Everybody in an investigation like this is extremely busy. Lots of information coming in, including information that really is extraneous, but you don't know that at the time. So there's a lot of sifting and sorting of information, a lot of trying to prioritize and make sure that your primary emphasis is in the right direction to recover the victim alive and well and apprehend the suspects.
Sleepless hours pass with no leads. Then, a break. Working with Donna Martz's bank, detectives learn her credit card was used in a shopping mall more than 100 miles away.
She had no relatives out there. There was just absolutely no reason for her to go that way.
The MO matches that of Goodman's killers.
Martz's credit card started showing charges on it a day or so after she had gone missing. We were fairly certain that she was not the one doing the charges.
The FBI dispatches teams to interview sales clerks at the mall. None of the clerks can positively identify Martin or King as the user of the card. But they are sure Martz did not make the purchases, which were for young men's clothing.
When you're working the case, you become very much aware that the clock is working against you, particularly when you have a situation like this where we know that Guy Goodman was murdered.
The next significant lead comes when Martz's account posts a withdrawal in Montana. It occurred days earlier at an ATM in the small town of Shelby. Montana FBI agents bring the ATM surveillance tape to the command post in Bismarck. Detectives Wayman and Zeckman positively identify Bradley Martin using Martz's credit card. It is the first definitive proof linking the suspects to Donna Martz. The tape confirms Martin and King traveled west, but there is still no sign of Martz. The evidence is building. Yet investigators' main concern is not prosecution, but finding Donna alive.
And although we had an ideal that they were heading in a general direction of west, they could change that direction at any time. So it was very frustrating because we felt that there was a short time frame in which, if Donna Martz was still alive, that we would be able to apprehend them and save her.
Special Agent Welkin knows they must speed up the process of tracking the victim's credit card usage.
I contacted Ben Patty, a retired FBI special agent who was employed by a major credit card company issuing Donna Martz's card.
At Visa's San Francisco headquarters, International Fraud Control Director Ben Patty agrees to help.
Normally, when a cardholder uses their credit card, that bank that issued the card will not see that transaction information for 2 to 3 days. That's when it's posted, and the bank would then know where the transaction occurred. Craig Welkin was really wanting to find out when the card that belonged to Donna Martz was used in real time, which we could not do with the systems as they were at that time.
To locate the suspects the instant they use the card, Visa must create a complex reporting system for a single credit card. But Donna Mart's life is on the line.
We contacted the systems people in the computer center and explained to them what we wanted. They said, okay, we'll go into our systems, make the necessary changes in the mainframe computer so that this specific cardholder number could be captured as it came through our systems.
The programmers estimate it will take at least 24 hours to create and implement the new program. FBI agents hope that the computer program will finally put them closer to the murder suspects and to Donna Martz before she too is killed. The coroner for Lebanon County, Pennsylvania, determined that retired florist Guy Goodman was savagely beaten and then slowly suffocated to death. His face was unrecognizable at the autopsy. The suspects, 21-year-old Bradley Martin and 27-year-old Carolyn King, have more than 20 felony convictions between them and are now fugitives on the run across the heartland of America. Authorities believe the couple is holding their latest victim, Donna Martz, captive and using her credit cards. The last charge was recorded in Montana. The FBI and police from across the country are in pursuit, tracking the suspects through the victim's credit card usage. Investigators remain one step behind. Led by Special Agent Craig Welkin.
That was due to the flow of the information from the merchants to the credit card company, and then when that information was actually available from the computer database.
In 1993, banking computers take days to post each transaction. Investigators await a new Visa program that will trap any activity on Martz's card. Pennsylvania detective Paul Zeckman chased the pair from the beginning of their flight.
It was very frustrating being days behind locating places that Martz's credit card had been used, because we knew that, number one, this couple had killed Guy Goodman. We knew that Donna Martz potentially was going to be the next victim. If she had not already been killed, there was nothing we could do more than what we were doing to try and locate them and stop this from happening.
Investigators try to estimate where the suspects will go next. They alert all law enforcement agencies on the suspects' possible routes. They post descriptions of the suspects in their vehicle in the National Crime Information Center's nationwide database.
We entered both Bradley Martin and Carolyn King in NCIC. They were also entered in as kidnapping suspects. In addition to that, regional messages had gone out to all the police departments to be on the lookout for Donna Martz, Carolyn King, or Bradley Martin.
If any police force in the country runs into the couple, the Bismarck Task Force will be notified. To further increase their chances, investigators fax descriptions of the suspects and the victim to police agencies along Martin and King's likely routes. But there are no incoming leads beyond the sporadic credit card purchases. Detectives Wayman and Zeckman returned to Pennsylvania to re-interview everyone who knows the fugitives. They hope Martin and King have made contact with someone back home.
We continually talked to individuals in the Palmieri area who were associates of Bradley Martin, trying to find out if there was recent contact with him or Carolyn King, and if there was, where were they at, where did they call from.
But no one offers new information. Despite every effort, investigators still have nothing. The FBI receives an update from the Visa Corporation in San Francisco.
This is Ben Patty, Visa International.
Visa fraud investigator and former special agent Ben Patty had asked the company's systems programmers for a way to trace Martz's credit card transactions as they are made.
TZ? And I told the FBI, and we set up a system of contact between our systems people in Virginia, myself, and then the FBI and their command post. After the system was in place, the first transaction that came through was a service station gas transaction in Southern California.
It was in Los Angeles several hours earlier. Investigators are closer, but still too far behind. While the task force notifies authorities in the LA area, Visa gets another hit on Donna Martz's card.
The transaction came through our systems in real time. As soon as it came through the systems, we notified the FBI's command post, and it would have been within our 2-hour time that the transaction actually occurred.
Then a transaction is made at a hotel in National City outside San Diego. Agents at the command post contact the FBI's San Diego field office. And the lead goes to Supervisory Special Agent Sam Stanton.
We received information that the Donna Martz credit card had been used at the hotel in National City. So immediately I dispatched agents over to the hotel off of Interstate 5. Agents interviewed the manager and the security guard and employees at the hotel and was able to determine that a couple matching Martin and King had stayed at the hotel using Donna Martz's credit card.
But the couple checked out 2 hours earlier, paying for the room with the Visa. Police officers and FBI agents swarmed the area, checking hotel parking lots, convenience stores, and gas stations for Donna Martz's Chrysler New Yorker or any sign of Martin and King. Special Agent Stanton knows finding the car is a long shot, especially when that car has a 2-hour lead on authorities.
Of course, San Diego's a very large city, and to try to find a vehicle in a city that size would be almost impossible. But we did put out an all-points bulletin and notified the state judicial police and the federal police in Mexico and the Border Patrol, thinking that maybe the individuals were headed toward Mexico.
The Tijuana border is the busiest in the world. In 1993, nearly 40,000 Americans cross into Mexico every day without having to show even an ID. If the fugitives make it past the border, it is unlikely they will ever be found.
All right. I know it's been a couple of days, but have you heard from Brad or Carolyn?
Well.
Then, the Pennsylvania detectives finally catch a break that narrows the search.
And what did he have to say?
According to Chief Michael Wayman.
We received information from an associate of Bradley Martin's, indicating that they had received a phone call from Bradley, and that Bradley was in San Diego, that he was with Carolyn King, and that they were headed back towards Pennsylvania. We took that information. We notified the San Diego office of the FBI, and they in turn notified the California Highway Patrol.
The fugitives made the call as they checked out of the hotel in San Diego. Martin and King still have a 2-hour lead, but authorities continue closing the gap. Soon a hunch and a bit of luck will bring the investigation to a violent and dangerous conclusion. Fall 1993. Authorities chase Bradley Martin and Carolyn King, suspected of murder in Pennsylvania and kidnapping in North Dakota. Investigators from both states are frustrated that for weeks they have been one step behind the suspects. They hope to find the pair before the abducted woman, Donna Martz, is killed. Then a new program created by the Visa Corporation at the FBI's request puts investigators only 2 hours behind the suspects. Investigators learn the two have just checked out of a San Diego area hotel. Based on their checkout time and the tip that the fugitives are heading east, FBI agents try to estimate their position. Special Agent Stanton has a hunch that the suspects will use Interstate 8, the southernmost highway going east. He determines that Martin and King will soon be approaching El Centro, California, near the Arizona border.
I called Agent Paul Vick in the El Centro office of the FBI and asked him to send out an all-points bulletin.
Stanton hopes he has picked the right route. As El Centro Special Agent Paul Vick takes it from there.
I called the California Highway Patrol dispatchers and asked them to broadcast the Martz's car description.
Wanted for murder that just left a hotel in San Diego, and we suspect they might be headed east on Interstate 8. We need them stopped.
The all-points bulletin about 187 suspects, police code for murder, is transmitted to every officer on Interstate 8, including California Highway Patrolman Richard Chambers.
CHP unit, El Centro, continuing standby copy information on 187 suspects possibly en route to El Centro.
I went and checked my section of the freeway like I normally would in the beginning of my shift, and I went west on Interstate 8.
As Chambers drives, he receives the suspect's descriptions.
First suspect is a Bradley Martin, white male, 6 foot 160. Second subject is a Carolyn King, black female, wanted by the FBI.
Within minutes, Chambers believes he has spotted the car.
I was driving west on the freeway through the desert, and there's not that much traffic. I saw the car go by eastbound, and I believed it matched the description.
But Chambers cannot see the car's license plate.
I wasn't sure, so I made a U-turn through the center divider and overtook the vehicle and verified the license plate. And it was, in fact, bearing the North Dakota license plate that we had received. El Centro 160 and 84. I think I'm behind the 187 vehicle. Could you send me a backup car?
Suspect in the vehicle looks like the black female driving. 21.
Dispatch advises Officer Chambers that there is no backup immediately available.
880, 10-8 response. Enough. Stevenson 880, 10-8 response.
Only one unmarked unit races to catch up to the suspects.
That's Sergeant Riley responding to the pursuit, joining pursuit.
Police know the suspects are desperate and probably armed.
2 suspects, a black female driving. We'll attempt to contact DPS.
10-4, they know I'm behind them at 60 miles an hour coming up on 186.
10-4 at 60 miles per hour coming up on 186.
But so far, the suspects appear calm as they approach State Route 186.
Support, they're going to head us south on 186. We'll look. They're getting off 186.
10-4 southbound on 186.
Chambers' backup is still several miles behind, racing to catch up. On Route 186, the chase intensifies.
They're not stopping. They're trying to accelerate to
70. The suspects try to shake Officer Chambers, but he maintains pursuit, even as they escalate to 90 miles an hour.
El Centro, notify YPD and DPS. Looks like we're going to be going Yuma and they go IA eastbound. Proceeding eastbound to Arizona.
The suspects cross into Arizona with Chambers on their heels. Although a California officer outside of his jurisdiction, Chambers continues his pursuit. He relays information to Arizona authorities. Then, the danger increases.
The male passenger did come out of the right front window with a handgun.
They're shooting. They are shooting. Sound like they're shooting.
Chambers stays on them, intent to capture the deadly suspects. As the cars speed toward the town of Yuma, Arizona, dozens of officers listening in race to cover Chambers. October 5th, 1993. California Highway Patrol Officer Richard Chambers engages in a high-speed chase with murder and kidnapping suspects Carolyn King and Bradley Martin. Near El Centro, California, the pursuit crosses into Arizona. Backup is responding. But as the suspects barrel toward the town of Yuma, Arizona, Officer Chambers is on his own and under fire. He knows he must capture the pair before they kill again. The suspects exit onto a smaller road, this one with intersections. Chambers radios their position.
They're going into Yuma now. Get my units out there, back them up.
They run through 2 stop signs without incident. Then, when they crash, the suspects flee on foot.
I got out of my car and drew my pistol and ordered them to stop, and I told them if they didn't stop, I'd shoot, and at that time the female did stop.
Then, Carolyn King orders Martin to stop.
Hey, get down! You call right there!
And I was able to handcuff the female. I just had one pair of handcuffs with me at the time, and I held the male passenger at gunpoint until Yuma PD arrived. It was probably only a minute or 2, but it seemed longer than that.
When the backup officer arrives, he helps take the suspects into custody.
Put your hands behind your back.
After a 2-week cross-country flight pursued by police and the FBI, Carolyn King and Bradley Martin have finally been stopped. But investigators' first concern is the safety of the kidnapped woman, Donna Martz. She is not inside the car. On the floorboards lies the handgun Martin fired at Chambers. They open the trunk. Inside, police find duct tape, a knife, and Donna Martz's glasses. But nothing indicating where she is. Martin and King are taken to the Yuma Police Department, but they refuse to tell officers what happened to the kidnapped woman. FBI agents arrive and interrogate the suspects separately. Carolyn King is defiant from the start, refusing even to admit her real identity. She claims no knowledge of Donna Martz. Another agent is unsuccessful with Bradley Martin as well. When Special Agent Paul Vick reaches the station, he learns that Martin has refused to talk.
Bradley Martin was pacing back and forth with his hands handcuffed behind him. He appeared to be in some kind of discomfort.
Vick decides to try another approach.
Martin told me that his neck hurt and he had pain extending down into his right arm.
Hoping to win Martin over and get him to cooperate, Vick offers to recuff him in front so he will be more comfortable. His strategy works.
Martin told me that he would speak with me.
The agent reminds Martin he had earlier invoked his right to an attorney, but the suspect says he is now waiving that right. Vic drafts a statement to ensure Martin's waiver will hold up in court.
Once he agreed to that, he signed this piece of paper that I wrote out that he agreed to talk to me, even though he had invoked earlier. After he signed that document, I looked him straight in the eyes and I told him that I knew that he killed somebody in Pennsylvania, but that I wanted to know that Martz was okay. And then I told him, "Is she okay?" And Martin looked at me and he told me, "No, I killed her."
Martin says they kept Mrs. Martz for over a week. But after several close calls with police, he decided to get rid of her. They stopped in the Nevada desert. He got her out of the trunk and walked her to a ditch at gunpoint. He says she knew he was going to kill her. She said one thing before he fired: that she loved her children. The news devastates everyone who had hoped to save Donna.
At the conclusion of the interview with Martin, we obtained a map which showed approximately where Martz could be located in Nevada. And we then faxed the map to the Elko, Nevada FBI office, at which time, late at night, a search was initiated to look for Donna Martz's body.
But Martin was doing drugs during his fugitive trek. His memory is unclear and his map inaccurate. Several times during the night, search crews call in for more information. The desert area near Elko, Nevada is hundreds of square miles. The crews do their best searching through the night and into the morning. Then, on October 7th, investigators find the body of Donna Martz about 1.5 miles off Interstate 80.
In a case like the Guy Goodman, Donna Martz homicides, the drive is to keep anyone else from getting hurt. Secondly, it's solving the case, get them off the street and into jail, and then successfully prosecute them.
In Nevada, Martin and King plead guilty to the kidnapping and murder of Donna Martz and receive life sentences. In Pennsylvania, they are found guilty of the murder of Guy Goodman. Both Martin and King are sentenced to death.
This case is an excellent example which showed the interagency cooperation between the FBI and local, county, and state officials in California, Arizona, North Dakota, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and numerous other states. From working together, we were able to solve this case and apprehend King and Martin and get them convicted.
For Donna Martz's 11 grandchildren, 3 children, family, and friends, the convictions bring a sense of closure. Even today, they are comforted in knowing police and the FBI caught Martin and King before they could claim yet another victim. A ruthless grab for power tears a city apart. A crime family splits in two as the young and the old fight to the death. The FBI is caught in the middle as they infiltrate the syndicate in a desperate attempt to end the brutal war raging on the streets of Philadelphia.
the early 1990s, Philadelphia became the scene of a bloody vendetta. The streets erupted in mob warfare. Authorities feared innocent people would be caught in the crossfire. I'm Jim Kallstrom, former head of the FBI's New York office. Agents launched a complex and risky surveillance operation. Their mission? To bring down a notorious crime family and to stop a brutal turf war before more people were killed.
(1990). A quiet morning in South Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Joe Andruzzi is being wired by the FBI. He's a 20-year-old accounting student at LaSalle University, and he's in trouble. He's been betting on football through a mafia bookmaker. He was winning at first, but his luck turned sour. He owes the mob $1,000. It's a debt he cannot pay.
You understand? I don't think you do, son. I don't think you got it at all. I think you understand what's going on here.
In way over his head and afraid for his life, Andruzzi contacted the FBI and asked for help.
It's money, kid.
South Philly is a tough place. Not the kind of place where you want to cross the mob. La Cosa Nostra, the Italian syndicate of organized crime families, runs a profitable and bloody business there. Gambling, loan sharking, and extortion rackets. For years, South Philly was run by Angelo Bruno, known as the Gentle Don because of his dislike of violence. He took over the city in the 1950s. He was brutally murdered in 1980. The man suspected of being behind the hit was Nicodemo Scarfo. Nicky Scarfo took over Bruno's empire. He was a cold-hearted killer who ruled the city by violence. But now Nicky Scarfo is in jail. The FBI wants to find out who is running the Philadelphia mob while the boss is behind bars. Andruzzi's problem with the loan shark gives the FBI the perfect opportunity to collect new information on the organization. The college student meets with the bookmaker. He plays his part perfectly and is introduced to Salvatore Sparacchio, a known member of the Philadelphia Mafia.
I don't have the money. You don't have the money.
FBI Special Agent Jim Marr was the case agent on this investigation.
Salvatore Sparacchio didn't make any overt threats, but the implied threat, I'm the boss of the family, you got to pay.
I want $120 a week for 10 weeks.
The boss offers a repayment plan. Although the mob is charging little more interest than a credit card company, the penalty for defaulting on the loan has a far higher price.
Nicky, here, take some cake home to your wife.
Hey, thanks, Bob. All right.
For the next 10 weeks, the FBI gives Andruzzi the money to make his payments. And each time he takes the money to the bookmaker, the FBI records the conversation, building their case against Salvatore Sparacchio.
Each payment is evidence of the crime, of racketeering.
But the FBI is not interested in making low-level gambling arrests.
How we doing, huh?
They have a much bigger target.
I'm sure it's all there.
The ultimate goal is to destroy the Philadelphia Cosa Nostra family as a crime problem.
Nicky, some cake? Hey, Boogie, you know too much.
The tactics we use are to attack the hierarchy. The structure is the target, and we attack the target through the hierarchy.
They need more information. So on Christmas Day, when they know it will be closed, the FBI breaks into the bakery shop.
We proved to the judge that gambling activity and loan sharking activity was taking place in an Italian bakery. The judge authorized us to put microphones in.
For the next several months, the FBI records the conversations inside the bakery.
And we began listening to conversations of Salvatore Spiraccio, who was claiming to be the boss of the Philadelphia Cosa Nostra family.
Although Spiraccio claims to be the head of the family, the FBI wire soon makes it clear that Spiraccio is not one of the big Philadelphia Mafia bosses. He is little more than an employee, but the FBI doesn't know who he's working for. Thinking he can lead them to his boss, the FBI surveillance tracks Spiraccio to a law office in Camden, New Jersey. There he meets with other members of the Philadelphia Mafia, including one man well known to the FBI, John Stanfa. John Stanfa is a Sicilian immigrant and a made member of the Sicilian Mafia. He worked as a driver for the late Angelo Bruno, aka the Gentle Don, former head of the Philadelphia family. Stanfa was implicated in the murder of the former Mafia boss in 1981 and was apprehended in Maryland. He was convicted of perjury in his testimony before a grand jury that was probing Bruno's death. He went to jail for 8 years. When he was released, the Philadelphia Mafia put out a contract on his life for the killing of Bruno. Special Agent Fred Walsh is a member of the FBI's organized crime squad.
Only through the intercession of his Gambino associates up in New York, the contract was taken off him and he was allowed to live.
After Nicky Scarfo went to jail, Stanfa returned to Philadelphia. He went to work in the construction business and laid low for a while.
He was relatively quiet. So when he started to come to power and we started to notice he was making a name for himself, it came as a kind of a surprise to us.
Thanks to the cooperation of the young college student, the FBI has now identified the man they believe is running organized crime in Philadelphia.
We had put away the previous boss and most of the hierarchy of the family. We felt if we could put Stanfa away, that we would go a long way towards the ultimate goal of eliminating the crime, the Philadelphia family as a crime problem.
On the street, informants confirm the FBI suspicion that John Stanfa is the new boss of the Philadelphia Mafia.
Once you determine that an individual like Stanfa's taken the family over, you want to see how he intends to run it. You contact your informants, see what they can provide.
Stanfa maintains a low profile. He runs things like the Gentle Don before him. He engages in traditional mob activities such as loan sharking, gambling, and extortion. The FBI wants to find out where he is conducting business. According to FBI informants, high-level secret mafia meetings are being held in the lawyers' conference room.
Informants told us that that's where they were meeting, that they felt secure there. Since it was a lawyer's office, they felt secure there from FBI eavesdropping. We decided that it would be a very, very good place to put microphones.
Agents prepare an affidavit to wire the premises.
We recognized that intruding into a lawyer's office was extraordinary. The affidavit had to go down to the FBI headquarters. The director of the FBI personally signed off on it.
A federal judge gives the FBI the green light. Agents install a hidden video camera outside the law office so they can monitor anyone who enters or leaves the building.
How about now?
A special FBI entry unit will install a hidden microphone inside the law offices. Agents make a surreptitious entry into the second-floor suite.
In terms of the actual entry into the premises, it's what I regard to be one of the most dangerous things the FBI does, because you're burglarizing someone else's property. Although you have authority to be there, the person, if you encounter someone, he doesn't know that you have authority to be there.
Inside, the agents fear they've been discovered. An armed deputy sheriff is inside the building.
The night before we went in, the re-elect the sheriff campaign moved into the ground floor. The agents making the entry were surprised by a deputy sheriff. Fortunately, they were able to conceal themselves. He got in and got out before there was any problem.
The technicians install a microphone in the conference room. The surveillance agents will first try to identify each suspect and determine their roles in the organization.
There's 18 FBI agents who do nothing but physical and photographic and video surveillances. Most of their work they did for the organized crime squad. So we've got a lot of manpower out there, and we've got people who know how La Cosa Nostra works. And we can a lot of times figure out a hierarchy just by watching the way that they behave towards one another. That, coupled with information coming from informants, can tell us who the hierarchy is.
Agents monitoring the conversations have to match the voice on the wire to the face in the video surveillance.
John Stanford was very easy. He had a very heavy Italian accent, so it was very easy to figure out when he was speaking.
But the agents have a problem.
The conversations we intercepted in the office indicated to us that they were leaving the conference room and going somewhere.
After going to all the trouble to plant the wire, the mob boss moves the meetings. The surveillance agents will have to find out where the meetings are now taking place. They will have to place another bug.
They're gone. They're somewhere else.
A few days later, the FBI learns from an informant that a high-level sit-down is about to take place at the law office between John Stanfa and several associates. They need to get the new bug in place before the meeting. But they don't know where the meeting will be held. Agents dispatch an undercover detective to follow Stanfa into the office. Philadelphia detective Mark Pinero gets the job.
We tried to come up with a reason to actually go into the law firm to get a closer look at what was going on. So we had come up with a cover story utilizing a name of an attorney that we knew had left that firm.
But it does not go exactly as planned.
This unknown individual held the door for me to go in first, which kind of set me back because I wanted to go in second. I wanted to see where they were going before I was attended to. But I was relieved when I walked in and the receptionist greeted John Stanfa, and John Stanfa told her, "Let him know I'm here." And the receptionist immediately keyed her intercom and let the lead attorney of this law firm know that John was there and to send him in. So not only was I able to get her to identify John Stanfa, I was able to stand there and watch him go down to the actual office of this lead attorney at this law firm.
That's good. That's real good. Okay, lock it on. Thanks.
With this information, a federal court approves an affidavit for a second break-in at the office. Agents install hidden microphones in the attorney's office. Shortly after the new bugs are placed, agents hear some alarming news on the wire. The mob bosses are afraid they are being watched. They hire a private counter-surveillance contractor to sweep the law offices for bugs. If he finds a listening device, the entire operation could be destroyed. The FBI in Philadelphia is closing in on mob boss John Stanfa. They learn he is conducting mob business in an attorney's office. Agents place listening devices in the office, but Stanfa calls in a man to sweep for bugs. Agents watch as the sweeper enters the building. Their entire case could collapse if he finds their bugs.
How long is this going to take him to... Here they come. What's going on here?
But after a few tense minutes, the private contractor completes his sweep without finding anything.
We'll be able to...
It sort of brought a smile to everybody's face because they basically brought in an expert who didn't detect anything. So that would bring sort of a feeling of ease on their part. And I guess our expectations were that they would be even more at ease to discuss further criminal activity.
Now, with microphones in the conference room and the lawyer's private office, the information begins to come in. The FBI learns that John Stanfa is having problems with a group of young mobsters. Born and raised in South Philly, their allegiance is still with Nicky Scarfo and the Mafia regime before Stanfa took over. They are known as the Young Turks. As far as they're concerned, Philadelphia is and always has been their turf. And the Young Turks deserve to be running the crime family, not newcomer John Stanfa.
I always do the best job.
Joey Merlino is the boss of the Young Turks. Michael Changlini is the #2 man. Joey and Michael have known each other since grade school. FBI Special Agent Gary Langan is the co-case agent.
They didn't like the fact that John Stanfa, who what they considered an outsider, would come in and take over the mob family. And so they were trying to organize their own little group, even though they were part of the overall picture. And they wanted to be in charge.
Informants tell the FBI that the Young Turks are not taking orders from John Stanfa.
He doesn't run the city.
They bragged about who they were and who they were aligned with. Bragged about how they were going to take the city over. They were the legitimate successors to the previous mob members under Nicky Scarfo. They were going out and shaking down bookmakers, drug dealers, and even shaking down legitimate businesses, and weren't sharing the profits, kicking upstairs to Stanfa.
The Young Turks feel they're entitled to run the city and the Philadelphia Mafia. The aging John Stanfa, the old world Sicilian boss, resents the ostentatious lifestyle of the Young Turks.
The Young Turks, if you will, were very, very flamboyant. They'd go into the clubs on Delaware Avenue, throw their weight around, push people around, trade on the fact that they were connected to the local Cosa Nostra family, and in general call attention to themselves, which is not a good thing. If you're running a Cosa Nostra family, you should be low-key.
Wait. Hey, girls, get in the car. James, come on, get out of here. Start it up.
The Young Turk boss, Joey Merlino, has a different idea of how a Cosa Nostra boss should live the life.
He was the kind of guy who felt that when he went into a restaurant, because of who he was, he shouldn't have to pay. This was easily adopted by his entourage, and they became a problem for everybody. There were fights, there were shootings, it's just not the way to run a Cosa Nostra family. Attracting all that attention to yourself. The police begin to know then where you are and who you are, and it's just not a good thing.
John Stanfa was particularly angered by the Young Turks' involvement in the sale of illegal narcotics.
That was the wave of the future, and it's an easy way to make money. Traditionally, the mob frowns upon having its members engage in drug dealing. Now, that's not to say that they don't do it. They get around that by having an associate or something deal drugs, and then they'll tax that individual and take a percentage of it. But Stanfa, he thought drugs were a dirty business and it draws a lot of attention, again, to the family. And he didn't want to do that. And these guys were just defying him and doing it. Once we heard that there was friction developing, we were looking to see how Stanfa was going to handle it. Okay, was he going to be aggressive and, take extreme measures? Or was he going to try and mollify these people and quiet them down and get them under his wing, so to speak?
But Joey Merlino isn't going under anyone's wing. The Young Turks strike back at Stanfa. 73-year-old Joseph Gattone is one of Mafia boss John Stanfa's most loyal employees. Gattone is a bookmaker, a collector of street taxes. 4 gunshots shatter the daily routine of Joseph Gattone. The old man's blood marks the beginning of a deadly civil war. The FBI and the Philadelphia Organized Crime Task Force surveilled top bosses of the Philadelphia Mafia. Friction between feuding factions of the crime family increase, and a bloody civil war breaks out. Philadelphia police officers arrive at the scene of the shooting. The victim's keys are still in the ignition, and the engine is still running. 2 bullets penetrated the victim's neck. A 3rd bullet entered his temple. A 4th grazed the bridge of his nose and shattered the passenger side window. When Agent Marr arrives on the scene, police have already checked the registration of the car, but they don't yet know who the victim is. Agent Marr recognizes the victim from previous investigations. Gattone is a longtime member of the Philadelphia crime family, currently under the leadership of John Stanfa. Several of Gattone's neighbors witnessed the shooting, but no one can identify the lone hooded gunman. Special Agent Jim Marr suspects Joey Merlino's Young Turks are behind the killing.
Where he was killed, the manner in which he was killed, indicated to me that the Merlino faction was sending a message to Stanfa and his people. We're here, and we are to be reckoned with.
John Doe's.
Agents monitor their wiretaps. But no one is talking about the murder. Special Agent Fred Walls.
Initially, at the time that this bookmaker was murdered, we weren't sure who was involved. There was nothing definitive on the wire after the bookmaker had been murdered. There was a reference to the fact, but nothing that would indicate to us that Stanfa had a belief someone had done it or someone hadn't done it.
Investigators are certain the murder is mob-related, but they have no proof. When they speak to Stanfa himself, he claims to know nothing. But Stanfa strikes back. 5 weeks after the murder of John Stanfa's bookie and tax collector, Michael Cianglini, the Young Turks' number 2 man, is coming home after a basketball game. 2 men armed with shotguns open fire. Somehow, Cianglini, his wife and 2 children, were uninjured in the attack. Investigators recovered 12-gauge shotgun shells from the front yard and shotgun pellets from the ceiling of the living room and dining room. Despite the brazen attack on Cianglini and his family, he won't cooperate with the detectives.
He wasn't going to say anything. They just don't talk to law enforcement. They feel they're going to handle it themselves. It's business, okay, and it's none of our business. So you're not going to get anything out of them.
The Young Turks' number 2 boss isn't talking. But the FBI suspects the attack is payback for the murder of John Stanfa's bookie.
After the bookmaker's murder and then the attempt on Michael Cianglini, we believed that we were going to see an increase in violence. There was going to be a potential mob war.
Fearing this, the FBI petitions a federal court to expand the eavesdropping. In the spring of 1992, they get the court order they need. Agents place bugs in 7 new locations, including lawyers' private offices, the law library, the television room, and the lunchroom.
I don't know.
The new wires immediately start paying off.
How we going, huh?
Early in May of 1992, FBI cameras catch Stanfa arriving at the law office with his consigliere and Joseph Changlini, brother of the Young Turk's second-in-command. Inside, John Stanfa angrily announces that he knows the Young Turks are looking for him. They want him dead. But Stanfa doesn't want a war. He wants to make one last attempt at diplomacy. His first move is to make Joseph Changlini his new underboss.
I guess he thought, as a concession to them, he would be able to control them. There's a saying, keep your friends close, keep your enemies even closer. This was the way to keep an eye on them. But we fully anticipated that we were going to see an increase in violence, but we were surprised by what did happen.
Informants tell the FBI that Stanfa invites Joseph Changlini's younger brother, Michael, and the Young Turk boss, Joey Merlino, to a secret meeting. Here, Joey and Michael become made members of La Cosa Nostra.
You have to swear to place the family before anything else in your life. God, your own personal family, your mother, your father, your wife, your children. If the family calls you, you come before them.
Now, as made members of La Cosa Nostra, the two Young Turks enjoy special privileges.
The benefits that come with that are that you can conduct your rackets, whatever they may be, without fear of interference from someone who is not a member. The family in a dispute will always decide in your favor if you are a member and the other person is not. A member cannot be killed unless the boss of that family to which he's a member approves.
For John Stanfa, promoting the Young Turks is his final act of diplomacy. The FBI and the Organized Crime Task Force will keep a vigilant watch to see if Stanfa's bold move stops the violence. But agents still need to collect more information about the crime family to shut them down for good. Through an informant, they learned the law office is not the only place where Stanfa and his associates are congregating.
We found out that Stanfa had opened up a dinette next to another business he owned, which was a food distribution business. And surprisingly, Stanfa actually worked at this place every day. You know, as a John Q. citizen, he would go to work and he'd actually work there. You'd see him out there sweeping and cooking and handling stuff. But he was also meeting his family members there and discussing mob business. So the next step, logically, is to attempt to get a Title III bug installed in the dinette so that we can listen to the conversations he's having with these members and associates of the family.
Once the microphone is installed inside the dinette, the FBI hears that an angry John Stanfa is still having problems with the Young Turks. He requests a final sit-down with Joey Merlino. Joey Merlino and Michael Changlini pay a visit to Stanfa.
So is there a problem? So is there a problem?
Gamblers are complaining that the Young Turks are not honoring their bets.
Can you be more like a Joe, your brother?
Merlino assures the boss he'll fix the problem and make good on the debts.
Pay the bill. And of course.
The meeting ends amicably. Perhaps there can be peace within the family.
Arrivederci. Arrivederci.
Okay.
Early in March, FBI surveillance agents observed Joseph Changlini and a waitress opening up the Stanfa dinette. It's almost exactly 1 year after his brother Michael was nearly gunned down at his home.
His activities were easy to document. He was regular. He got up in the morning and he went to work.
But on this morning, Joseph Cianglini's routine takes a terrifying twist. 4 men pull up and open fire on Cianglini and the waitress, reigniting the bloody war between the old and the new mafia of South Philadelphia. On March 2nd, 1993, in South Philly, underboss Joseph Cianglini and a waitress opened John Stanfa's diner.
I'm gonna hit my head one of these days. That's dangerous.
Shortly after 6:30 a.m., 4 gunmen launch an attack. Cianglini is gunned down. The surveillance agent alerts FBI HQ and calls 911 for an ambulance. The FBI agent on surveillance arrives on the scene. Joseph Cianglini has been shot repeatedly in the head, neck, and chest. The waitress is unharmed. Cianglini has somehow managed to survive the deadly attack. Though severely wounded, he can talk.
You couldn't get a statement out of him, and even if he knew who did it, he wasn't going to implicate anybody. He was part of the mob, the Omerta, the Code of Silence, and they would take care of this on their own.
They had to know who they were. He saw them. We suspected that it was a group from the Young Turks, but he basically told us he didn't know anything.
Hoping to identify the shooters, FBI agents review the surveillance tapes. But in the early morning darkness, the images are too dark to identify anyone.
The video was very grainy, very blurry. It was very hard to identify with any kind of particularity features where you would recognize who actually went in, but you could see 4 shapes going in. Then you go to the audio and you hear screaming, and you hear shots, and then you hear someone yelling, "Move, move," and then they exit the place and they drive away. Well, that's basically all we had. You couldn't say with any reasonable certainty who actually went in there and shot Joseph Cianglini.
But agents are still surveilling the law office. In the listening post, wiretaps record a chilling conversation between Stanfa and a mob associate. John Stanfa suspects Michael Cianglini was behind the attempt to kill his own brother Joseph at the restaurant.
Yeah, Michael and Joey were on the opposite sides of internal war within the Stanfa family. They were half-brothers, and it didn't make any difference. He thought his brother Joey was on the wrong side, and he's going to take him out.
For John Stanfa, there is only one choice: eliminate Joey Merlino and the Young Turks.
So he starts to recruit his own muscle to send them out and to start stalking these Young Turks and trying to kill Joey Merlino, Michael Cianglini, and the people associated with him.
Undercover FBI agents deliver a warning to Merlino and Michael Cianglini.
What's going on, fellas?
When we're aware of the fact that violence is going to occur or may occur, and we think we know who the violence is going to occur against, we have an obligation to go out and warn them.
John Stanfa is sending hit teams into the streets with orders to gun down Merlino and Cianglini. The Young Turks shrug off the FBI warning. Even though they know their lives are in danger, they refuse to cooperate. The Young Turks should have listened to the FBI. A Stanfa hit team tracks them down and opens fire in broad daylight. Michael Cianglini is shot in the heart and dies on the street. Joey Merlino is wounded. It is clear to the FBI that John Stanfa means business.
He's taken up the challenge, and he's retaliated with a lot of force. So that's where we are right then and there. We believe that Stanfa is responsible for it. Now we have to prove it.
3 hours after the shooting, South Philadelphia police officers respond to a burning vehicle. The car matches the description of one seen by witnesses at the shooting. Police run a trace and learn that it was leased to a member of the Stanfa crime family. That night, police question Phil Coletti and his wife. She tells police she reported the car stolen. Coletti says he has been home all day. The FBI views the couple's alibi with skepticism. Coletti becomes the first suspect in the shooting murder of Michael Cianglini. Several days later, the FBI gets a lead on the second shooter.
The FBI had received a call from a physician who said that he had treated an individual who came in with burns that he felt were rather suspicious.
FBI agents find John Vesey at home. He too is a known member of the Stanfa crime family. Agents ask Vesey what happened to his hand. And he says he had an accident with his barbecue grill. His hand was burned when he spilled lighter fluid. Vesey insists the burn was an accident and says he knows nothing about the murder of Michael Cianglini and the shooting of Joey Merlino. But when investigators check out the grill, they discover it runs on propane, which conflicts with Vesey's story that he was using lighter fluid when he burned himself.
It aroused our suspicion and kind of pointed us toward Vesey, more so than anybody else.
The FBI suspects two members of the John Stanfa crime family in the murder of Michael Cianglini and the shooting of Young Turk boss Joey Merlino. But before the FBI can bring the shooters to justice, Joey Merlino and the Young Turks try to get their own revenge. John Stanfa is riding in a 1976 Cadillac Seville. He's headed south on the Schuylkill Expressway with his son Joseph and a trusted driver. A van pulls up next to the Cadillac. Two gunmen thrust 9mm machine pistols through portholes cut in the side of the van, and they open fire. A full-scale mafia civil war rages on the streets of Philadelphia. Violence explodes with a brazen rush-hour attack on Sicilian mob boss John Stanfa. The gunfire misses John Stanfa, but his son Joseph is hit in the face. Stanfa's driver rams the van, forcing it off the highway.
What was really brazen about it was on a highway like that, random shots could have struck and hurt, even killed any innocent people who were on there.
Investigators have no doubt the attack on Stanfa is Joey Merlino's revenge for the murder of Michael Cianglini.
It showed you the extent of the violence these people were willing to employ and the grudge they bore against Stanfa.
Police find Stanfa at the hospital. Despite the brazen attack on him and his innocent young son, the Cosa Nostra boss claims he has no idea who tried to kill them.
And of course, it's the old, I don't know who would have done this to me. And we don't get anything out of him.
It is only a matter of time before innocent civilians get caught in the crossfire. And it's time to turn up the heat on the warring mob. Any known Stanfa or Merlino associate seen driving around South Philadelphia becomes the subject of a routine traffic stop. Authorities arrest 8 mobsters for carrying weapons. They confiscate .380, .45, and .38 caliber semi-automatics. The FBI has no doubt the Young Turks boss ordered the hit on John Stanfa, but feds can't prove it. Joey Merlino has to be yanked off the streets. The FBI arrests him for a parole violation of a 1990 armored truck robbery. With Joey Merlino off the streets, it is now time for the FBI to focus its sights on John Stanfa's crew. The agents target murder suspect John Vesey. The professional hitman is one of John Stanfa's soldiers. But tonight, thanks to a New Jersey firearms violation and the threat of a long jail sentence, Vesey has agreed to wear a wire for the FBI.
He was a very tough individual. And he did some construction work as a hired laborer for John Stanfa's brother-in-law, who was in construction. And he caught the eye of Stanfa, and Stanfa realized this kid was a tough kid, and he could, he intimidated people.
Under Stanfa, Vesey became a loan collector, an enforcer, and a killer.
Okay.
Now he claims he feels the weight of the murders he committed.
All these things, plus the fact that his brother, who really cared for him, was convinced that John was going to go down and never see the light of day. His brother convinced him that he should cooperate.
Vesey was made into the family by John Stanfa. And now he wants to get out, alive.
You couldn't measure the significance of it. It was like a coup for us that he came on board.
Vesey quickly becomes comfortable wearing the wire. He has several meetings, but the conversations don't provide any new evidence against John Stanfa.
He's out for a little while. I think he met with one or two people, nothing great. He was a little down about the fact that he wasn't getting the conversations, he wanted to. He was really into it. We told him, look, don't worry about it. We got a lot of time. We'll do it again till we get it right. It's Friday night now. You've worked long and hard for us. Go home. Go home and relax. Don't go out. We'll hook up with you again. We'll do it again.
Later that night, John Vesey runs out of luck, and the FBI's Organized Crime Task Force is dealt a crippling blow. In a bloody South Philadelphia mob war, the FBI's #1 informant is gunned down by mafia hitmen, and the FBI's best chance at busting up a notorious crime family is shattered. FBI Special Agent Fred Walls is devastated by the news that informant John Vesey has been shot.
Well, when you hear that someone's been shot in the head, you think the worst.
But against all odds, after 3 .22 caliber slugs slammed into his skull, John Vesey is still alive.
I'm shocked. This guy was shot in the head. He's given an interview. And he proceeds to tell what happened.
Earlier that night, after he removed the wire and the FBI agents went home, Vesey ran into John Stanfa's underboss and one of his soldiers.
I know a nice place. And they tell him, we've been looking for you. We want to get you started in your own bookmaking operation. We're going to show you how to do it. We're going to go over to this location in South Philadelphia above this meat store.
For Vesey, it was just another late-night business meeting. He wasn't wearing the wire anymore, and he thought he had nothing to fear.
He says he goes up to the room. The maid guy is sitting down with him at a table, going over figures, telling him how to take bets, how to write stuff down. The underboss excused himself. He has to go to the bathroom.
John Vesey heard the sound of the flushing toilet and the door to the bathroom opening. And then he heard the gunshots. 3 .22 caliber slugs impacted John Vesey's skull, but he didn't go down.
Vesey turns around, looks at the guy, and says, "What the frig you doing?" And of course, the shooter now, he's in shock. So he throws the gun down, and he pulls out a knife. Well, Vesey takes the knife away from him and cuts him and basically incapacitates him and throws him on the ground. He turns to the other guy, the main guy, who's an older guy, and the guy looks at him and he says, John, He said, this has all been a mistake. It's a misunderstanding. We're gentlemen here. We can settle this. And Vesey says, get out of the way, or I'm going to take you down too.
And against all odds, John Vesey walks out of the room alive.
And that just goes to show you how tough this kid was. I mean, he was tough. And the bullets went into the back of his head, and we later found out they had hit the head and come around, okay? I guess the slugs weren't as strong. It was a 22 caliber long rifle slug. And he took 3 in the head and survived.
2 weeks later, ex-mafia hitman John Vesey makes his first appearance before the federal grand jury and testifies against his former crime family. The information he provides is invaluable to the FBI. Vesey names names and gives the FBI what they need to move against the Philadelphia mob. When the FBI increases the pressure, other mobsters make deals with the prosecutors and become informants for the FBI. And the dominoes begin to fall. On St. Patrick's Day in 1994, 24 suspects are arrested on racketeering charges of murder, murder conspiracy, extortion, arson, kidnapping, gambling, and obstruction of justice. Among those arrested is Frank Martinez. He's found guilty of assault and the attempted murder of John Vesey. Vincent Pagano is also arrested and found guilty of assault and the attempted murder of John Vesey. On the same day, John Stanford is arrested on racketeering charges of murder, murder conspiracy, extortion, arson, kidnapping, gambling, and obstruction of justice.
It was a nice, clean, easy sweep. We brought the people in, and we were very satisfied with it.
Ultimately, 27 people are charged with conspiracy and racketeering under the RICO Act. 24 defendants are either convicted or plead guilty to the charges.
I felt pretty good that we did make Philadelphia a little bit safer. It was my job. It was my life's work. I thought we did a good job, and I thought that we served the citizenry very well with what we did. We took a very, very violent group and sent a lot of them to jail for a long, long time. And we made Philadelphia a little safer.
On July 9th, 1996, John Stanfa is sentenced to 5 consecutive life terms. He is serving them at the United States Penitentiary in Leavenworth, Kansas.